I will be very quick to say that there were a lot of, or I say a lot, there were several guys that had a very good relationship with the management of the area. A couple names like Griff Shirley and Gunnar Bird, and there were some other guys that really spearheaded the work days and the volunteer trail efforts to help maintain that area because the Forest Service didn't have the equipment to be able to maintain it or the knowledge, and so it was all done by Southern Four-Wheel Drive. And so I may have been the president, but I was not the brains behind that operation, or the brains or the brawn. It's two different animals. When you have and I'll call it an app, and I realize Onyx is not just an app, or Gaia, or any of the other things that are similar. You may use it through an app, but they have, desktop versions and all that. And like our foresters, and me included, use Gaia, which is very much like Onyx. But if you're generating your trail maps through data that is submitted by your users, there's no quality control.
Yeah, we have, whenever we start working on the schedule, by September of this year for 2025, we've almost got every weekend booked for a different kind of event going on. So
that's awesome.
It is really cool. And it's all different kinds of events. It's an event for side-by-sides, an event for Jeeps, the shindig that we do, our fall jam. There's just so many different things. People do fundraisers here. People do their weddings here. So.
Oh.
Welcome to the Campfire Podcast, where stories are told and legends are made. Tonight, we have Samantha Collins and Brent Galloway from Windrock Off-Road Park in Oliver Springs, as better known Knoxville, probably area, Tennessee. Brent you've been riding those lands since the age of 15, which was obviously only like 10 years ago. But you've been Windrock for 20 years. Samantha, you've been in marketing over there for about 14, if I'm not mistaken, 15 years. How the heck are you guys? It is incredible to have you guys on the show. Thank you very much for your time and tonight, and we're great to have you. How are you guys?
Doing well. Happy to be here.
Well, cool. Well, great to have you. Well, as we always are around the campfire, we are very laid back and chill, so we're excited to have this conversation, to learn more about you guys, and to learn more about Windrock, the great Windrock. I think I discovered, I mean, you guys have been around for a long time, but I got back into four-wheel drive off-roading about 6 years ago. Discovered Windrock through an event, a jamboree from the Southern Four-Wheel Drive Association. They had an event out there about 6 years ago, and joined that and fell in love with the park. I was talking with Samantha. I don't know if I got hooked up with the right people. There was a guy named Moose that I got hooked up with, and he ended up dragging me around the park. He said, at the end of the whole event, he told me, he said, "Hey, there's a trail called Trail 15. Would you like to go up it?" And I was like, "Man, I'll do anything as long as you drag me through it." Of course, what I was driving was a TJ on 30s. Yeah, but we won't say that he hung me up at the very top and then I got to get winched out. But I made it all the way to the very top. So in those little 33s. So awesome. We enjoy the park. I know Clinton goes often. We love the park. It's fantastic.
It's a great piece of the East Coast wheeling explorations for sure.
Now, Samantha, you are the marketing manager, correct? Yeah. Very cool. And you've been with Windrock
I've been with the park for about 14 years.
Okay.
I started in 2011. I actually started as the receptionist, and I guess more or less just worked my way up to being marketing manager. I have a marketing degree, so it actually worked out perfectly. And yeah, I love my job.
So when you looked at the ad at receptionist at an off-road park 14 years ago, that probably wasn't the size it is now and wasn't as well known as it is now.
No.
Why in God's name did you take that job?
Okay, so when I got out of college, like, I don't know if you remember, but like 2010, 2009 is like when you can get a job. You just couldn't, like, those that got out of college, like, we were working in grocery stores, stuff like that, and not able to use our degree, which I know that's still an issue for some people now, but actually, I heard about the job and I was just told, you're going to be the receptionist in the main office. It's really kind of, we called it the Knoxville office. And it was then Coal Creek Company. So I was the receptionist for the Coal Creek Company. So yeah, it's changed a lot in 14 years.
Yeah, I bet. Brent, you've been, is this not your baby? Can we not just say that? Or is it?
Well, I've been around. I've been riding on the property longer than it has been an off-road vehicle park. But as far as an employee goes, I am a forester by trade and had a consulting forestry business. And so the Coal Creek Company was a client of mine for a couple of years before their general manager that had been with them for 34 years passed away. They bought my business, hired me, and hired the forester that worked for me at the time as employees. And they hired me as the general manager of the company, but then also of Coal Creek. Well, technically it wasn't Coal Creek OHV area. It was Windrock Properties, but managed the off-road vehicle park because of my off-road vehicle history. And I've been with them as an employee for 15 years. So just only a year or so longer than Samantha.
Okay.
But my mom, I'm 50. So in 7th grade, my mom would drop me and a buddy off with our dirt bike on Saturdays or on a weekday during the summer, and we'd go riding. And she didn't have a clue where we were. My dad didn't know where we were, but that was at a time that you could drink out of water hoses, and you came home when it was dark.
Yeah.
But and we were trespassing, and even in high school when I got my first Jeep and all of that, we rode up there, and there again we were trespassing. But ultimately, the company, its main source of income was coal mining, had timber harvesting and things like that. But ultimately, they didn't care. They didn't try to keep people off the property, and over time they realized there were a lot of people like me that were doing this, both local and out of state. And the previous general manager was like, "Hey, I think we may be able to make some money at this and help with people paying to be on the property, also helping control forest fires and illegal dumping and some of the other things that happen on a piece of property this big." And so in 2001, that's what they started doing.
Very cool. Very cool. So, Sam, when you got into the receptionist position, was off-roading something new to you, or?
I rode four-wheelers in my yard with my dad. We would go in our yard. We had a huge, just a huge hill, wooded, and we would go back behind the house and ride all the time. So I wouldn't call me a connoisseur, but I knew that I was like, okay, I can enjoy this.
Yeah.
Right.
So, yeah.
Now, you guys both from the Tennessee area, or?
Yes, I am from Gibbs, Corrington area. So, I live in Halls now. It takes me about an hour to get to the park.
Okay. Is that north of I have no idea where any of that is. Halls is?
I am directionally challenged.
East is southeast of the park.
Okay. Very cool. All right. And Brent, you born and raised in Tennessee, or?
I am. My dad retired from the Department of Energy, and like so many people that work for the Department of Energy and other related government jobs, moved here because of Oak Ridge National Lab and the government facilities here. But they moved here about a year before I was born, and I've been here my whole life. I'm originally from the Oak Ridge area, which is very close to the park. and
Yeah.
my wife and I live just barely into the county south of there in Knox County. It's actually closer for me to go to our corporate office in Knoxville than it is to go to the park, but my office is actually out at the park.
Okay. Very cool.
Yeah, you forestry guys don't go very far. You guys don't. I got a few buddies that are Clemson exchange folks, and they don't travel very far from home, so
Yeah,
they don't move very far.
I've worked around in different places. I've been fortunate to travel a lot. I love to travel and ski in different places, but East Tennessee is still home, and it's always good to be home.
That's awesome.
Very cool.
It's a great
very
place.
Cool. Yeah, so I guess UT fans. So you guys are living right? No,
I served my time at UT.
Thank you, Brent.
I served my time at UT, and I'm a fair weather Vol fan. If they're doing really well and I've got nothing else going on, I'll watch a game and root for them. But no, I'm more of a doer than a watcher.
I got you.
Yeah, same.
I can't sit still long enough to watch a game. So
there you go. Well,
yeah,
this is why we choose off-roading. So
yes, that's exactly right. That's exactly.
In the last 6 years, I've gone from a connoisseur of football to listening to it on the radio as I'm doing other things. Sweet. I can do that.
Yeah.
I can do that. Because unfortunately, my Jeep needs a lot of work on a Saturday afternoon too. So, but that's a whole different story. Well, very cool. Well, I mean, Sam, you grew up riding four-wheelers around the area.
Yeah,
or just around the yard. You took this gig. What was the biggest challenge when you took the role as I mean, how long did you work as a receptionist?
Gosh, probably 4-ish years.
Okay. So when you took over marketing, what was the biggest challenge that you were facing at that time for the park?
It's a whole new ball game. We did marketing, but we had our Bill Lyon at the time. He was our COO of the company. He decided he wanted to create a marketing position. And so there was someone before me. And then when they decided that they didn't want to do it anymore, it was brought to me. And of course, I prayed about it because I was like, I don't know, I'm scared. That whole thing, being a whippy baby. But I ended up, I said yes. And at first it was scary, stepping into a new role from a role that you were confident in. It was scary at first, but what we're doing is exciting. It's not like it's hard to advertise or to talk people into just trying it. And I have a great team. We work with an advertising agency called Citizen Agency. They're a local advertising agency here in Knoxville, and they're great. They love to bounce ideas just all the time, and so we've constantly got something going on.
Very cool.
Just great.
That's cool.
So it never gets stale.
Yeah, that helps. That helps for sure.
And from my standpoint, it has been cool to watch Sam grow. In addition to dealing with Windrock Park, I also deal with a lot of the stuff on the company property, with the timber harvesting and oil and gas. And we have some long-term rental houses that go back to the coal mining days and things like that. And so I used to, when Sam was in the receptionist position, I used to work with her on a lot of those things. And then, as watching her grow in the marketing position has been fun. And I think, not here to just dote on Sam, but she didn't pay me to say this, but she really does a great job with the marketing of our park.
Yeah.
Because it's not just working with the ad agency or just working with, say, our general store or this. It's a lot of different things, and she and I work very well together. And it's been fun to build that teamwork and that team, and sometimes there are weeks that we talk a bunch, and other times there are weeks I don't talk to her at all. But I feel like we both feel like we can count on each other when there's something like this tonight, or something dealing with something else at the company. It's good to have work friends that you can truly count on.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Brent, you talk about being a GM. I mean, you obviously don't just walk in that position. You talked about your consulting firm. Go back a little further from that. You got into leadership. You were at one point in time, the youngest president of the Southern Four-Wheel Drive Association.
That's cool.
How in God's name did you fall into that role?
So
You lost a bet?
no.
Jeez.
I bought my first Jeep when I was 15.
Very cool.
And
it was
it was a 1975 CJ5
There you go.
with a 304 and a 3-speed that was torn out of it.
Nice.
And paid $800 for it.
Love
And
that.
my engineer dad, helped me figure out how to get the transmission out of it. Buy a new one. We didn't rebuild the one and put a new used transmission back in it. And my parents didn't buy my vehicles when I was a kid. They paid for my insurance, which I didn't. Looking back, I appreciate much more than I did at the time.
Yeah.
But it taught me the value. I could go out and tear the Jeep up, and then I was riding the school bus the next day. But anyway, I bought my first Jeep when I was 15. Other than I've always owned 4-wheel drives. There have been a couple of periods in life where I haven't had a Jeep per se. I joined. Technically, my dad joined a local 4-wheel drive club called Tennessee Valley Four Wheelers. The reason my dad joined is because you had to be 18 to join, and when you joined, it was for your whole family. And so my dad joined so I could be a member, and I went with a local group of guys. Most of them were old enough to be my dad, and they taught me four-wheeling.
Very cool.
And as a teenager, all I cared about was mud, and all the old guys didn't like mud because they had already gone through that stage and had replaced bearings and brakes and all that, and I hadn't experienced that yet. But anyway, I stayed active with Tennessee Valley Four Wheelers, and they were members of Southern Four-Wheel Drive Association. And then I went into forestry school in college. I was at the local community college. Took everything I could take there before going to UT. And because of my forestry background, when there was a vacancy in the board for the director of conservation and land management, I honestly don't remember whether I raised my hand or somebody raised it for me. But I took over Southern Four-Wheel Drive's director of conservation and land management, which I started dealing with United Four-Wheel Drive Association at the time, and dealing with, at the time, the Upper Tellico OHV area in the Nantahala National Forest was still open. And there were a lot of discussions with the U.S. Forest Service at the time about that area. And even though I was young and in school, I still had I was better at communicating to other foresters than most of the established guys with the organization were. And so developed some relationships there. And then at some point, the presidency was vacated. And there again, I don't remember whether I volunteered or somebody raised my hand for me, but I was elected their president and served. I don't remember how many years. It was I think it was 4 years as their president. At the time, there was 1,100 to 1,200 families in the organization. It was a very large organization.
Yeah, that's
cool.
I'm not sure.
What were those 4 years that you were?
That would have been in the late 90s, probably 90. No, let me think back. I graduated in 97. No, it would have been before that. That would have been in probably 93 or 4 through 7 or 8, something like that.
Oh, so your reign made Tellico infamous, right?
Yes, but I will be very quick to say that there were there were several guys that had a very good relationship with the management of the area. A couple names: like Griff Shirley and Gunner Bird, and there were some other guys that really spearheaded the work days and the volunteer trail efforts to help maintain that area, because the Forest Service didn't have the equipment to be able to maintain it or the knowledge, and so it was all done by Southern Four-Wheel Drive. And so I may have been the president, but I was not the brains behind that operation, or the brains or the brawn. There were several guys that all had equipment companies or equipment experience, and they stepped up, and we worked, every year we worked several weekends at the area, maintaining the trails and doing the equipment work that the Forest Service needed.
Yeah, I got a chance to go out there in 2003, 2004, maybe. I mean, I guess right before it closed. Unfortunately, I mean, it was a great trail system back there. I mean, it was technical. You'd be cruising up a hill, and then, I mean, you run into a huge boulder up in there, and there were some lines up there that could even, I guess at that time, buggies were struggling with, but yeah. And, it was technical. I mean, you have more insight than probably anybody. Do we blame the fishermen for that whole closure, or what really was the catalyst that closed all that?
It certainly was. I wouldn't say you blame the fishermen, because the science says that, yes, there was sedimentation that do affect trout, and it did happen. And is it worth pointing fingers and saying, well, if Trout Unlimited hadn't been pushing the issue, it would have stayed open longer? But ultimately, high impact use, such as off-road vehicles, it's not a game that the Forest Service likes to play. It's very different here in the mountains of East Tennessee or Western North Carolina than it is dealing with a desert trails in Arizona or Colorado or wherever, or snowmobile traffic. I mean, there's lots of motorized recreation on public property, but impact from ATVs, side-by-sides, Jeeps, etc., it made that area difficult. All of the trails at Tellico were old logging roads. They were not designed. If you took that brand new piece of property and you made trails out of it, you would lay them out more differently than what they were laid out from a logging standpoint. A lot of them went down through hollows and basically paralleled a creek all the way down the mountain. And it's hard to keep sediment out of the creek. And of course, I'm disappointed. It was a great place to ride, but it was not Trout Unlimited's fault.
No, I agree.
It was a topography. I mean, it was just it wasn't laid out that way to start with. It was designed to fail.
And hindsight, obviously, with the onboarding of UTVs, I mean, it wasn't going to make it much longer. It would have anyway.
If UTVs were there, I mean, the use there would have skyrocketed, and it was a small area. Yeah. I don't remember off the top of my head. I don't remember the mileage of trails or the acreage, but like compared to Windrock Park, it was just a blip. It was a very small area, and very constant. The trails were all narrow. Like, it was hard when Jeeps would meet. You had to pick a place to be able to pass each other. It just was because the terrain was super steep and the trails were narrow, and it was.
Yeah, I remember the trails being tight, and there was no getting around anybody. Like, even the staging area was tiny.
Right.
So as the youngest president of Four-Wheel Drive Association, you take on challenges of, how many, you said, thousands of families being a part of this association, probably led by much older guys than you, right?
Obviously, yeah.
So I asked Sam what her challenges were. What were your challenges walking into that role as what probably, I'm sure somebody thought, this young punk is going to ruin everything?
There were probably some of that, but overall, most of the people that were there, even though there were 1,100 to 1,200 families that were members, when you'd go to one of their quarterly meetings, there would be the same 30 people or 40 people. And when you went to the Dixie Run or one of their big events, there was a lot more people. But I got to know these guys and their families, and they were very receptive to me and supportive of me. And part of it, I'm sure, was that they didn't want to do the job. I was dumb enough to be willing to do it.
Yeah.
And, and I'm still very good friends with several of them today. There's an older guy that I met then that still he actually is good friends with Moose. You mentioned Moose.
Okay, yeah.
It's one of at Jeep Jamboree, Moose and this gentleman lead the ride together. And there's probably, I'm not exaggerating, I bet there's close to 50 years difference in between Moose and this guy.
Yeah, did he drove a black YJ, or what was his name?
I'm drawing a blank.
Yeah, I can't remember.
Randall
Yes,
Davis.
Randall, that's
Yep.
what it was.
Yeah,
he drove it was a black YJ or CJ. I couldn't remember, but
it's a YJ with
Yep.
an LS in it. And so he's one of those that I met. And every time I see Randall, when he comes to the park several times a year, he always either shakes my hand with a big old smile or gives me a hug and says how much he loves the park, And
Yeah.
so it was people like that I met and started working with, that even though Randall's old enough to be my dad, he was very supportive. There were a lot of Randalls. And I don't ride that much now, but when I do, I ride with a very select group of guys. Literally, I can count them generally on one hand, and most of those came from that era in my life. I'm still friends with them. I still ride with them, and and you know what you're getting when you go with them, and that's who I choose to ride with.
Yeah.
yeah, that's
Makes
cool.
sense.
I remember riding with Randall and picking his brain a little bit, and I remember going, this guy's forgotten more than I will ever know. He's
Yeah.
one of those guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he did, and older he is, and he had no problem climbing in and out of that rig.
Mm-mm.
He didn't care. He was very laid back and chill. It was awesome. But yeah, he was a great guy. Yeah. So you left, you did that for 4 or 5 years, and then why didn't you continue that path, I guess? Was forestry just...
Yeah, I had graduated from school, and that's all I ever wanted to be, was a forester. And so I worked. I got my first forestry job in Monteagle, Tennessee, and worked down there for about a year until I was able to find a job back in East Tennessee, and moved back here and been here ever since.
Cool.
I mean, you mentioned the difference between the West and East, obviously different terrain, topography. I think Clint and I both grew up in Colorado. I think the first time I had to pull a trailer through the mountains of East Tennessee, I was clinching the steering wheel and butt puckering down some of these passes, which,
It's a lot different.
I mean, it's a lot tighter turns. And, we got Monarch Pass outside of our hometown. It's, 6 miles up, 6 miles down, % grade, because the mountains are so wide. Well, here they're so short, and, it's straight up and straight down. And your topography is obviously different. What's the challenges out in East Tennessee that from either a forestry standpoint and just a conservation standpoint, that obviously related to off-road, because obviously the public land issue in out west is huge right now. The Blue Ribbon Coalition has a heck of a fight on their hands out there for public land usage, and being a conservation for that and so forth. What's the challenges we have out here in the East that off-roaders don't understand or don't really know about?
Probably the biggest thing in East Tennessee that has changed over the years, like in my I'll call it riding life, we used to ride a lot of areas that were privately owned, by, Bowater or in some other industrial forestry company. Didn't have permission. You just went. And even a lot of other smaller properties, you just rode. There were trails there. People were not as concerned about trespassing. People were not as concerned about keeping people off their property. I mean, we weren't legally, yes, we shouldn't have been trespassing, but it was also just kind of accepted.
That was hose water days.
That's what?
That was hose water days when nobody cared.
Yeah, right.
Yes, that's it.
They weren't afraid. They didn't think you're going to get
it's
sued.
changed.
Yeah.
When that commercial came on at 10 o'clock asking where your kids were. Yeah, because you had to be reminded, oh, you have children,
Right.
you need to go find them. Right.
Yeah. And so, we have lost huge amounts of acreage in East Tennessee, Eastern Kentucky, Northern Georgia that we used to be able to ride, even if it wasn't 100% legal. We used to have all kinds of places to ride. And almost all of those are closed now. A lot of it has been sold. There's been a lot of people that have moved into this area especially the last few years, but even over the last 20, there's been a lot of people that have come here and they buy these pieces of property and they're not okay with a dirt road going across their property that people who are not owners that just come riding through. So they're gated, they're locked, there no trespassing signs put up, and and so that's changed. So we are blessed in East Tennessee to have places like Windrock Park.
Yeah.
And the state-owned property, such as the North Cumberland's WMA, the Tackett Creek area, which is privately owned, but it's managed by the state. We have well over 100,000 acres. We have more than 200,000, actually, now that I think about it, of acres that it's available to ride. And it's for a fee, but if you want to ride, if you talk to people like yourself from other parts of the country, people would give a lot to have that much property in their backyard that they could pay them money and go ride, regardless of the cost.
Agreed.
We
It's
have
worth
customers
it.
that complain about cost, but ultimately in the scheme of a side-by-side or a Jeep or whatever it is, the cost of a permit is almost the cheapest thing they can.
Yeah, the cost of living out west is a hell of a lot more than it is out here. So it's a lot cheaper to wheel, just paying that small fee.
Yeah. And when I moved out here from Colorado, I got out of four-wheeling because of that fact right there. I'm used to going 5 minutes down the road and being on a dirt road and going wherever I want. And you get here and it's like everything's privately owned. There's no dirt roads. There's, living in South Carolina, I think South Carolina is one of the only states that has 0 state-maintained roads for off-roading, designated off-road. We got other parks and all that, but they're, like you said, they're privately owned that have been turned into those. There is no state-maintained road for off-roading. So, yeah, I got out of it for that reason, and then actually got back into it because I found out about Windrock, and I was like, oh, sweet, well, let's go up there and check it out, and finally got back into it that way. But yeah, I guess what's the challenges that we have going forward? I mean, do we see a pattern of losing more lands or losing more opportunities, or is it going to be people that own large pieces of land, which that's getting few and far between anymore because it's being sold off into smaller plots? What's the challenges going forward for four-wheeling in really the North Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky area?
It's going to continue to get worse, I think. There are within 8 hours of here, there are a handful of private parks that are, 500 acres to 3,000 acres. Things like insurance is becoming more and more challenging. I mean, everybody's homeowners' insurance is going up. Their auto insurance is going up. Well, the same companies that insure those types of insurance are the same types of companies that provide insurance to Windrock Park and other private parks as well. And you can't operate without insurance, and that's going to become more and more difficult to get and more expensive.
Yeah.
And I think some will be generational. I'm not referencing anybody or any park in specific or specifically, but if somebody has bought property or inherited property and they're trying to run a park and they get tired of the hassle, they get tired of the headache, and it is different if it was actually your personal, like it was your business where you were dealing with every single thing, where we, at least Sam and I and others, we have our own roles and we wear multiple hats, but generally speaking, unless there's a podcast to do or there's an emergency, when I come home, I'm at home. It's I'm off work right now.
Yeah.
Now, if something blows up at work or there's an emergency, somebody will call me and I will go take care of it. But if it's your own business, you eat it, you sleep it, you dream it, you never get off from doing that. And so after a while, I think people are likely to say, I need to do something different.
Yeah. That makes sense.
And that developer that wants to buy that 500 acres and cut it into 50-acre tracts is sounding more and more appealing, and especially as property values go up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge. I mean, yeah, and you can't. How do you compete against that? Because you can't compete against the guy. It's like, oh, well, I can make so much money out of this. I'll just write you a check for that. And you're right. The headache's gone. Get a nice payday. I'm out. Unless you have a love or a passion for it and willing to do it, then yeah, you're right. Then there's another park gone, another opportunity to wheel.
One thing that we haven't talked about is, and it's not much of a competitor for us, but it is, the way I see it is somebody that is close by is a competitor. But the same people that own machines that ride here, that if they are going to, say, Hot Springs, Arkansas, Hot Springs is not a competitor of ours, but the more places you have to ride, the better it is for the whole industry. So somebody that lives in Nashville and is 4 hours from Hot Springs or 2.5 hours from us, they can come to us or they can go to Hot Springs.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to if Hot Springs went away, if we were the only option, they might get bored with it sooner.
Mm-hmm.
And so, having other parks is beneficial for all of us, I think.
Yeah, I would agree.
Kentucky has done a great job in a couple of places like Harlan, and there's another newer park, forgotten where it's centered. It is more central eastern Kentucky. It's still in the coal fields of Kentucky, but it's north of Harlan. Where counties or municipalities are pushing for these parks and leasing property from coal companies or other. And, their benefit is getting tourism dollars coming into an area that doesn't have tourism to speak of.
Yeah, definitely.
And Harlan's a prime example. I rode there last summer. We went up, we rented a place to stay, we ate at restaurants, we bought food, we bought gas, then we came home. And it's obvious that it's being run by a municipality. The trail maps aren't very good and some other things, but it's still a place to ride, which I don't consider them a direct competitor of ours, but it is a benefit because it helps keep people in the recreation.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, you manage, you say, honestly, you say competitors, and that wasn't even a thought in my head. Because it's like, oh, it's Windrock. People go all the time. Like, I guess what other side of the business of Windrock, I guess, does nobody know about? Because, that's obviously one of those things that I wouldn't think you guys, but duh, as an old 90s term, duh, you have competitors. I guess I just never thought about that. And, what else what side of business is Windrock that we don't know about?
There's a whole lot you probably don't know about.
Well, yeah. So,
I guess a little bit of history that a lot of people might not know is that we've been in business since 1872. We are one of Tennessee's oldest operating businesses. We are the oldest operating business in Anderson County, for sure. But even in East Tennessee, we are one of, and probably even in all of Tennessee, we are one of the oldest businesses that are still functioning. And we started out, we were just a coal company. That's all it was. And then we eventually, got into forestry and oil and gas and some other things. And we still have those revenue streams coming in. We have communication towers on top of the mountains. We have the Buffalo Mountain Wind Farm and things like that. Our biggest source of revenue is our recreation business. But there's a lot of other pieces in the background and in our history that have gotten us to where we are today. And if we didn't have recreation, it would be very different. When I started working for the company, I think the campground had just opened, and I think we had 11 or 12 employees total. And that was our corporate office, that was security, that was campground staff, trail crew, that was everybody.
Yeah. How many do you have now?
Low 50s.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't really know. I know it's a big deal because we have surpassed 50 in some of our insurance requirements and things. Change yet when you have more than 50 employees,
Yep.
But I would guess 52, 53, maybe something like that.
52.
52. Okay.
Yeah,
Well, there you go.
I heard it the other day. And I
Those
was
darn two people.
I know.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's
So-
the old adage? Last hired, first out? No, never mind. Yeah.
So, and so one of the other things that people may not realize is, well, who owns Windrock? I mean, sometimes I get the question, so do you own it? I'm like, nope, we are a publicly traded company.
And I think in my research, I found that out, and I was like, I don't know why that was so dumbfounding to me, but the fact it was publicly traded is, I guess I didn't understand the scale of what Windrock land management and forestry really was.
Yeah. Now, I do have to say that it's also trading, thinly traded. There are only 93,000 shares or something like that. And so it may go all week, and there may not be any shares of Windrock Land Company, who owns Windrock Park, traded, where every day thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of shares of Coca-Cola and GM and, other major companies, they trade every day, where we don't. And so it is a little different we are a little different than larger companies, but it is kind of cool, to be able to say, sure, I own some shares. I'm a part owner.
Yeah.
But
Four.
That's
I'm proud
great.
of
see, we're owners.
Yeah.
And how many do you need for a seat at the table? Never mind. Forget it.
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
talking that route. I got 3 kids in a Jeep. I'm definitely not talking about that. But yeah, I think it's great. So what other? So you said you got the turbine park, the coal. You still pulling coal or no? No.
No, there are a few permits that are still active, but we haven't had any active mining in at least 11, 12 years, probably, something like that.
Now, is it just that property? Like, if you look
Yeah.
on a map, it's just that property. There's no other
Correct.
property beyond that.
Yeah, it is. It is close to 74,000 acres, relatively contiguous in 4 different counties.
That's huge. I think
But
this year we ended up we looked at a map because we were up north of Rocky Top at an Airbnb, and we were looking at a map, and I said, that trail 70 whatever runs all the way to the top out there. And I was like, I think this road you can get over and it connects. And so we started all the way up there and found our way. And of course, we bought our permit online.
Mhm.
We,
You
good
did.
job.
yeah. Thank you very much. So we didn't bypass anything, but I think we found our way, and I didn't realize how far north it went towards Rocky Top up there.
Well, and that's, you're talking about what people don't know. Of course, we love having people around the trailhead and the general store, and the campground and all of that. But a lot of times I think people are afraid to get away from those center main trails that they're comfortable with. The trail 22, the 2, the 4, trail 16, trail 15, those. And they think they're getting way out when they get to trail 75 on Walden Ridge. But there is a lot of riding up north.
Yeah.
And so even when I have some friends that come into town and stay at the campground and I go ride with them, a lot of times we'll meet at the campground and then we'll drive to the north side just to go and either drive the Jeeps or pull them on trailers and park. There are some places that you can park and leave vehicles on the north end and ride up there and then still come back to the campground.
Yeah, I thought that was great. It took us all day to work our way down and kind of went back up, found some other trails, and you end up going up and down for a while until you work your way south far enough to get back on one or whatever to head back that direction. It was great. Trails, obviously you would never find leaving the general store because it would take all day to get there and back.
And I like being on that end because you can ride and sometimes only see one or two people the whole day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was nobody for us for a while, and which made us question a lot of what we were doing.
At least you're questioning yourself.
Well, the first road we went down was not on your property. We thought it connected, and then some hunter came up behind us, and my buddy and I were like, this is where it ends for us, right here. But great guy. He's like, no, this is not the road you want to be on. You want to be on this road over there. So, yeah, we were a little lost for a while.
He said, you ain't from around here, are you, boy?
And it was the start of, it was the week. Actually, the funny thing is I asked the question to my buddy. I said, I wonder when hunting season starts around here. And it was that day. It was that Saturday and he was going to his stand. And I was like, yep, well, there you go. Answers that question. So, yeah, I was blessed to start up there and see all that and be a part of all that. It was great up there with so much. We'll talk about maintaining trails and because you go from dirt roads to rock piles that 6 feet tall. How do you maintain it all? Yeah.
It's a challenge for sure.
By the seat of your pants every day.
Yep. No, it's we have a full-time trail crew. A lot of people know Ron Durant. He's been with us for about the same amount of time Sam has. He is retiring at the end of the year. We have his replacement already, and we are. Here's a plug. We are hiring another trail crew position after the first of the year. So if there's anybody out there that is interested in a job, and I will say that it's a job just like any other job. Is a lot of people come here and think that it's going to be. They have this vision of going riding every day and having fun every day, but it's a job just like anything else.
Right. Yeah.
They work really hard to maintain the trails, keep the trail. We pride ourselves on having the trails marked well with signs, having a trail map that is accurate and up to date. Samantha works a lot with Ron in the past trying to get those printed and done and coordinating that with our app that we use. But maintenance is a big deal. 2 or 3 guys, when you've got more than 300 miles of trail, you can't get to all of it. And we don't have that goal. Kind of as a general rule, we don't do much maintenance on black diamond or double black diamond trails. There is a segment. There's a segment of our customers that want challenge. It's kind of interesting to see that evolve as well. It used to be just the Jeep and buggy guys that wanted the high challenge trails. And now with 4-seater side-by-sides and 35 or 36-inch tires. There are more and more guys and gals riding side-by-sides on the trails that used to be only Jeeps. Now, when I say Jeeps, that's kind of a broad term. Only Jeeps were on. And so, when there's a storm and there are lots of trees down, the guys go out and spend a lot of time trying to open those back up. But we try really hard to keep most of our easy and moderate trails. That's the way we want them. We want them to stay easy and moderate, because there's a whole lot of our customers that's what they want. They want to be out in nature riding with their friends or their family, but they're not looking for the true challenge. They want to put it in four-wheel drive,
Right.
but they're not looking to beat up their machine.
Yeah, they got to
They're
drive it
not
home.
looking. Yeah, they have to drive it home, or even if it's a side by side. There's a guy that I ski patrol with that came to our fall jamboree. It's the first time they had ever been here, and I saw him the following weekend, and he was upset that he had broken his rock lights underneath his Polaris General. And I was just like, well, what did you think? You had lights underneath your vehicle, But the more I thought about it, he lives in Gatlinburg. He had made it street legal. He used it to run around the city of Gatlinburg.
Yeah.
He wasn't used to rocks and mud and ruts, and I think they were hooked. They have been back. He and another patroller. They've been back more than once now, and one of them just sent me a picture the other day that he had traded the General, and now he has an RZR Pro, I think is what he got.
Yeah.
Nice.
So, I think they're hooked, but it was just, they weren't out looking for challenge. They just wanted to go get dirty, and that's all they wanted. And so the trail crew works really hard, especially the stuff that's around the trailhead, the Trail 2, Trail 22, the connector trail to the campground. They're working on that stuff every year, trying to keep it where stock machines can navigate it relatively easily. And that takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So you mentioned, there's two things I want to touch on. One is the map. So I guess when I'm riding around, obviously you buy your map online, buy the membership every year for your map of the park. What's the challenges, and when is Onyx and your map going to be on the same page?
Never.
Hey, fair deal.
It's a lot different when you have, it's two different animals. When you have and I'll call it an app, and I realize Onyx is not just an app, or Gaia, or any of the other things that are similar. You may use it through an app, but they have, desktop versions and all that. And like our foresters, and me included, use Gaia, which is very much like Onyx. But if you're generating your trail maps through data that is submitted by your users, there's no quality control. And I've seen some of the Onyx stuff, and it's atrocious.
Yeah.
And from our standpoint, we have spent tens of thousands of dollars over the years. The trail map has been a project of mine since I started. I'm a forester. I like maps. And when I started, our map was not very good. And it's a work in progress, and has always been. And like the revisions that Sam and Ron have been working on recently, they're pretty small. They're not major changes, generally speaking, but what you have, the product that we have now, is, I would say, one of the best trail maps from an off-road vehicle area in the country. I have, the very first time, I mentioned Harlan, the very first time I rode at Harlan after it opened, literally the trail map was on an 8.5 by 11 photocopied sheet of paper, and it was hand-drawn for the entire area.
Yeah.
Nothing to scale, nothing computerized. It was just photocopied. And most are not that way, but there are a lot of areas that the maps are pretty poor. And ours are very accurate and up to date. And that's the other thing. Our app is the background of the map. The map app is the exact same image that our paper trail map is. If you come into the campground or the general store and you buy our huge trail map, that same image is what is running in the background on our app.
Yeah.
And it has the biggest thing that our app provides is the magic little blue dot that shows you where you are.
Yeah.
I mean, because we found that our customers, the main thing that they want is to just know where they are. So they can look at the map and go, okay, well, this is what we're going to do. They can whip out the trail map, and if they don't know where they are, it doesn't do any good for planning.
Yeah, right.
And so things like Onyx, and there are some other mapping softwares out there that are subscription based, that are a much better product than Onyx or Gaia. But and we will work with them to a certain extent. But we want our app, our map will always be the most up to date.
Sure.
Because when a trail designation changes or a trail gets rerouted or we add a new trail, this is the first place. And to be quite honest, if you look at the reviews of our app, some of them are in the early days were horrible because the app was horrible. I don't know how many headaches Sam had because of it, but it was horrible to start with. Do what?
A bazillion. And it was because people didn't know how to use it. They didn't know when you got onto the property, that little blue dot was going to follow you everywhere you went.
Yeah.
Right.
So as soon as they got there, they're like, oh, we understand. It just took a minute.
I mean, I've done, and of course you have a whole generation coming in that's never looked at a paper map.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't know how to track themselves through a system, which, when I first started going,
they needed to tell you.
Yeah, right.
Which is so crazy.
I need you to tell me exactly where I am, which the convenience of that is great. I started coming to Windrock when it was just paper and using the app now. I think the last trip we went on, I quickly threw Onyx to the side and said, well, it's not going to work because I'm already lost to where we are and that trail's not there. And it puts me over here and this map shows me there. And I quickly ditched that and just use it for tracking. But you're right. The blue dot was helpful because you can take a right and a left and then be somewhere where you're like, oh crap, where do we go? Oh, we should have taken that road back there. And that blue dot definitely helps because you can get lost. I mean, your app makes you feel more comfortable, especially when, like I said, when we started from the north and came down, we wouldn't have known that stuff existed out there without it.
How many trails does Windrock have that is open to public?
That's not a question I know off the top of my head.
It doesn't have to be accurate. I'm just curious.
Sam may know.
I think it's 316.
Yeah,
wow.
That's miles of trails. Yes.
Yeah, that's a lot of
miles
trails.
Miles of trails.
Yeah, I thought you were asking the total number of trails, and
I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Never counted.
Yeah, it was 323 was the mileage we had for a while, but we have actually closed a couple of things, and we've opened some new ones. Actually, I'm not sure what the current on this most recent reprint or new map that we're coming up with that will be available very soon. We've added a few trails, so I'm not sure what the new mileage will be.
Are the numbers accurate, or are they just thrown at it? Like, is 95 actually trail 95 in the list, or is it just like, oh, we're gonna just shoot a number at that? How does that work?
We draw it out of a hat.
Yeah, you're just like,
That's
wait,
good.
this
Yes,
number
that's
is not as what 13 got closed. This one's gonna be 13 now. Whatever. I don't know.
So no, there is some of that. We did go sequentially. It went up in numbers. Oh, a little explanation about trails. We call them. I guess technically there's three types. We say P1, which we only have one P. P stands for paved. It's a paved road. It's a private road. It's 100% on our property and is not maintained by the county. So we call it P. Then there are the Gs, the G2, G3, G39. G, it's misconceived sometimes that they're gravel roads. The way I describe it is they are either gravel roads or they're old gravel roads. They were former gravel roads. I would say that 95% of the G trails are easy. We do have some that have gotten more difficult, and so we have moved them to be moderate. So we have probably, 3 or 4 or 5 maybe that are moderate level G trails with a G number. And then we have one on the north side of the property that is actually it's a black diamond. It was an old gravel haul road that hauled coal or used for hauling coal or timber. But there's a gas line that runs down it, and we can't maintain it because of the gas line. So it's a black diamond. So we've gone sequentially in numbers with both the G and the regular trail numbers. And as some trails have gotten closed, those numbers have traditionally just gone away. I can't think of a good example. Maybe Trail 25. There used to be a 25, and I'd actually have to look to see if there is one now or not. I think there is. We didn't want to confuse people by having, let's just say Trail 25 was on the south side of the park, and now all of a sudden Trail 25 is on the north side of the park. And so when we would do away with the trail number or the trail, the number would go away also. So there were some gaps. But what we've done as we've expanded is we are nearing 100. And 100 doesn't seem like that big of a deal until you're trying to put 3 numbers on a trail sign, or 3 numbers on a map, or 3 numbers on what is most difficult is our yellow fiberglass posts that are at the trail intersections. It seems like something small, but it is a challenge. And so kind of like trying to stay away, keep our employee number below 50 as long as we could. We're going to keep trail numbers below 100 as long as we can. Now, we do have Trail 100. That is a new trail. That's a little bit different. It's a 50-inch trail, but the rest of them, we're going to try to fill in the gaps before we actually start making Trail 102 or 110 or whatever, so we can just make our lives easier.
Makes sense.
Again, one of those things that nobody thinks about in the business of maintaining an off-road park. So let's get into this because I definitely did want to ask this question. Sam, you're classified as a UTVer, correct?
Yeah.
You're rocking a what?
It's
What are you
a
riding?
KRX 1000. It's a 4-seater
Oh, okay, very cool.
for the family. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So from the Jeepers of the world, okay, sounds good. Yeah, that's all I can say about it. How do you guys?
I will put them not a side-by-sider, but if I was going to own one, that's what I would own.
Yeah, no, they're
the beefiest of side-by-sides. I mean, they're built the size of their differentials. Jeep guys would appreciate
right.
Nice.
I think my dumbfounding moment was standing on 15 several years ago, watching these guys hit it, and especially now.
I cannot believe how they just hammer on these.
Mhm.
They get them and they don't let off the pedal. They just keep it's the craziest thing I've ever seen. They run the hell out of them. I mean, they really do.
How do you guys? I'm sure I'm not the first one to ever say that UTVs are ruining Windrock. Not that I believe that, but I'm sure that's come across y'all's desk several times. How do you manage the wheelbase separation, the rut? I mean, I guess the last time I heard about it from somebody was Trail 16. Oh, you don't want to go down that anymore because the UTVs have all ruined that, and they've rutted it out.
We hear it from both sides.
Yeah. Shit,
Yeah.
fair deal.
Yeah. Both sides.
Yeah.
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure.
Everybody's ruining it. It's okay.
Everybody ruins everything.
At the
You
end of
don't
the
do
day, it's
what
a
I do, then you
recreational
ruin it,
park,
right?
right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're all here to off-road and use our recreational vehicles, which is going to ruin the trails. That's what we're doing. I mean, literally.
How do you guys manage that in the trail maintenance and maintaining the trails? And
We have some what we call ATV and side-by-side only trails that Jeeps are not allowed on, and that's a challenge because, like Sam's KRX, it's about as big as my first Jeep.
Yeah, it won't go on the a lot of the ATV only. It's too big.
It's too wide. Yeah, it's too
My
wide,
favorite
and
trail I can't go on.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah.
It's mine.
Wow.
And that is one of the reasons that we now have our first 50-inch trail, which is Trail 100. And so it's mainly, there are some 50-inch side-by-sides there, but the most people that are using it are ATVs, some dirt bikes and stuff. And it's a good addition. We are going to make some more and see how they are received. And, and if it does seem to be beneficial to the park, we'll continue it. And if they don't, we won't. But, I feel like I'm seeing a trend towards ATVs are becoming more popular than they were.
Oh yeah.
And I think, there's two pieces of that. You can go buy a good utility ATV for $8,000 or $9,000, where a new KRX 4-seater is a lot more than that.
Mm-hmm.
But the other thing is, I grew up riding dirt bikes and then 4-wheelers. As I've said earlier, I've always had Jeeps, but side by sides, that's not my choice. There are a lot of people that love them. They're not my choice of vehicle, but I could see if I had a side by side and kind of getting bored with it and going, maybe I want to go back and ride a 4-wheeler again and kind of get back. It's a different experience, having a seat between your legs and handlebars is very different than riding in a Jeep or a side-by-side.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
And I think there's some appeal to that to people. It's kind of like getting back to your roots. They're more dangerous. They don't have a roll cage. They don't have seat belts. They don't, but it's a different animal and a different experience.
Mhm.
So that may be some benefits to having some 50-inch only trails.
Yeah. The trails down, speaking of Trail 16, we were down there and then we decided not to go down it because it felt like there was a lot of traffic going down it. So we turned up Trail, 17 it was, which honestly got real technical towards the top.
It does.
I puckered a little bit. The hills are steep around here, man. That's there was one section about halfway up, there's a rock ledge. And I got up to it and put my tires on it and I was staring at the sky. I had to back up and talk myself through it before I gave it a little gas and tried to get over that hump. But all those new dirt cutouts, obviously we rode down that way and there was a whole new dirt cutouts out there down there by 17 and 16 on that end. I don't know if they're new, but they were more dirt and dust, sand kind of trails. I guess it would be to the east, right? No.
Well, no, I'm still not sure what you're talking about.
So, Trail 17, is it where that is? You come down there and it looked like it was newly cut.
Could it be a timber?
Actually, yes, there could have been a timber sale. Had the timber been cut?
Yeah.
And actually there used to be a gas line that came down Trail 17 and when was this?
This was this
Just
year,
in the
August. Yeah.
No.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know what they were doing.
Okay. Well, it looked like dirt and sand, like it was cut, like you guys were putting new stuff in, but I don't know.
They may have just been doing trail maintenance.
Okay.
I don't.
I hadn't been down there before, so I don't know what it looked like before. So there you go. So you talk about ATVs and 4-wheelers and obviously the risk of riding. We all do this sport. We know there's some factors of rolling over, tipping over, falling off, whatever. Obviously, we take our own safety protocols in Jeeps, roll cages, seats, depending on your level of expertise and what you plan on doing. How do you guys manage the risk of the riders and the safety of the park, not only for the participants, but for the organization as well?
Well, our biggest push for safety is our alcohol policy. Basically, every place says no alcohol, but there are a lot of places that don't do much about it. And that was us initially. We had the policy, but we didn't do a whole lot to enforce it. And then we decided that we were going to really start enforcing it. And we do. We take that very seriously. And we are okay with reasonable consumption in the campground and things like that. We want people to enjoy themselves and have a good time, but we believe that alcohol and horsepower don't mix. And I was, as we were talking before the show, I was initially a little bit nervous when we started really pushing the policy. I felt like we might lose some customers. We were going to make customers mad. It was going to affect the business. And I'm very pleased to be able to say we have lost some customers. And that's okay. Those were the guys and gals that were causing problems, doing donuts, tearing stuff up, littering, etc. And we don't really need their business. But for every person that has left and won't ride at Windrock Park, I think we've gained 3 or 4 or 5 people at least that have come here because of our policy. They bring their family and they ride here as a family because they don't want to have to worry about getting run over by somebody that's drinking. And that doesn't mean that alcohol doesn't make it into the park. People get very creative in trying to hide it and sneak it in, and we certainly can't catch everybody. But we maintain a database, and we depending on attitude, a lot of times you customers may get a second chance if they get caught with it. If attitude is bad, they may not get a second chance. If you get caught again, we don't want your business. And that's just the way that it is. For the safety, we're protecting all of our customers, but we're actually protecting people from themselves. And nothing good comes from drinking and riding. If you were only going to have 1 or 2 beers during the day, that's actually not a problem. But it's the guy that comes with a 12-pack that he's drinking. It's half gone by noon, and you can't allow 1 or 2.
No,
it's all or nothing.
Yeah,
and
there's no
policy.
gray in there. It's either, you're right. It's either all or nothing. I think the nothing policy is fantastic. I know I enjoy it, appreciate it. I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to worry about Joe Schmo who's flying up the road. At least I know, hopefully, there's a great % chance he's sober. He's just maybe being an idiot. I'll deal with sober idiots much better than I deal with intoxicated ones. And yeah, I think it's a great policy, and it's great for our family because I don't need my kids being around that, and it's not what we do. So,
and the other thing I will say about safety is encouraging everybody to wear their seatbelts. That is, I think, a lot of times in Jeeps and side-by-sides especially, I guess only those because you don't have seatbelts on UTVs and things like that, but you get complacent. You have a roll cage, you're going slow, you think everything's fine until it isn't. And when you realize that it isn't, it's too late to put your seatbelt on. Seatbelt holds you in your seat. Generally, roll cages hold up. They may get damaged, but they hold up and they do their job, and the belt will hold you in the right place. But once you start bouncing around in the cab or get thrown out, that's when real bodily harm happens. And so, put your seatbelt on. That's it, and it's something that is so quick and easy to do that can prevent injuries.
Yeah, it really is. And I've been, I know Clinton and I, and pretty much everybody's been, a non-adherence to that every now and then, because you're right. You get complacent, jump in and out and going back and forth. And all of a sudden you're standing up your rig and that seatbelt's locked and you're already in trouble.
Yeah.
You forget it. Like, good luck, Hucker. And praise God, last time I had my seatbelt, I stood it up on a trail, and I had a buddy tell me, he's like, man, I've never seen you so scared in the driver's seat. I said, I'm not moving until you get that winch line hooked up. And yeah, but it was one of those moments, praise God, I had it on, because it could have gone totally different. But yeah, And obviously, if you're on an AT or even in a UTV with the roll cages, wear a helmet. Yeah, for sure. I guess the other public service announcement is, speaking of winches, use tree savers, obviously. Yeah. And that's probably you guys fight that a lot, or is that something that's not too much?
It's hard to fight that.
Yeah.
That's one of those things that, tread lightly and other organizations push, but it's hard for us to get that message out.
Right.
When we have lots of messages to get out to customers, and proper winching techniques is not one of those. We've never tried. That's not something we've ever really tried to tackle. Even though it is important.
So what is obviously the no alcohol one's the message you push out. What are the other messages that you're pushing out to your customer base?
Anybody under the age of 18 is required to wear a helmet. That's not in a Jeep like yours. It's really mostly for side-by-sides, ATVs.
And that is a state law. And we enforce the state law.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, they can bounce around pretty quick and little bodies. Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, because those roll cage gets real tight when they're right here and right next to your head, and yeah, you don't need that mess. Now, you're not just a four-wheel drive and off-road. You do mountain bikes as well. What sparked that avenue of having, it's one of the premier mountain bike parks in the U.S. You guys hold mountain bike competitions, championships, and all that. What took the idea to bring that on board? Was that first? Obviously it wasn't first, but.
Well, for clarification, it's our property, but we do not run the bike park.
Okay.
There's an operating agreement we have with the owners of Windrock Bike Park, and it's had two owners. The original two guys that started it, there were some local guys that had built some downhill trails where the trails are now. Built and run, not say run, there was no running to it, but they built the trails, they maintained the trails. From my standpoint, from a management, we didn't have any involvement. I didn't care that they were doing it. And then we were approached by a couple of guys that wanted to actually turn it into a business. And make a long story short, we came up with an agreement. We leased them the area and we got a percentage of their sales. That's how we made money. And they built more and more trails. And then last year, I guess, or was it earlier this year?
I think it's last year.
Last year, I think. I agree. The bike park was sold to another couple.
Okay.
Aaron Gwynn is a professional Red Bull sponsored downhill mountain bike racer who was nearing the end of his career, just from an age standpoint, and knew they needed to do something different. And he and his wife operate as a team, and they've made a bunch of big changes. They've hired some new people. They've got somebody great that is doing their trail work. And they have a very different vision than the last owners. And I'm not knocking the last guys, because the previous owner, he would work daylight to dark. He put tons and tons of time into it, but he couldn't do everything himself. And Aaron and Lauren are kind of a breath of fresh air to the park. They've made we built the building, but then they finished it. Their bike shop is wonderful. We've doubled the acreage that's involved in their lease. There are some gnarly trails, but they are working. Their goal from here forward is to develop more and more easy and intermediate trails.
Nice.
So I think it will continue to grow. Growth has been a little bit slow. It's challenging, but I think their biggest obstacle has been the challenge of the trails. when you've got a 12 or 14-year-old son that's racing downhill, dad still rides, but dad's not riding the same trails. There's nothing for him to do. And so I think with the new trails they will be working on that are much easier, I think that will increase growth quite a bit.
Well, it doesn't matter how easy you make them. You're not getting this big body on a downhill anything. That's too much momentum flowing in the wrong direction. I'll stick with my Jeep going uphill. Yeah, that's some much better control of momentum doing it that way. But yeah, it's when we first got there, I mean, the park looked awesome. So I didn't know you guys, it wasn't a direct part of your organization. So that's very cool to learn.
And the Windrock shooting range is very similar.
Okay.
It has the word Windrock in it. It is our property. It is our building, but we have a lease agreement with the business owners.
Okay.
And, it's good for our customers. It gives them something else to do. It does draw a lot of outside customers that don't have anything to do with off-road vehicles also. But, it's just one more thing to do when you're on vacation at Windrock.
Yeah.
I think it's awesome. It's like a theme park for all sorts of things. It's great.
Yeah.
I've heard people call it redneck Disneyland.
I love it. I love it.
Well, over the last few years, I'm sure it's what Sam hangs her hat on. I mean, you guys have gotten music festivals out there now, concerts. You guys are all doing all sorts of things.
Yeah, we have, whenever we start working on the schedule, by September of this year for 2025, we've almost got every weekend booked for a different kind of event going on. So
That's awesome.
it is really cool. And it's all different kinds of events. It's an event for side-by-sides, an event for Jeeps, the shindig that we do, our fall jam. There's just so many different things. People do fundraisers here. People do their weddings here. So,
oh wow, that's really cool. I
it's
didn't know
pretty
that.
neat.
Yeah.
So, Brent, are you officiating these weddings, or is there a package where you're gonna officiate this stuff, or you pass on that?
I hadn't thought about that. I wear a bunch of hats, but ordained minister is not one of them.
Minister Galloway.
I could start growing my sideburns and look like Elvis, and we could have us a wedding chapel.
There
That
you
would be
go.
good.
Yeah,
I'm all about it.
I was gonna say you got to be careful probably what you say in front of Sam, because I have one of those staff members that I have to be real careful about what I say, because everything I say will come to fruition.
Yeah,
and I'm one of
let's-
those. Yeah, I'm one of those outward processors. I'll just talk about something and just let it go. But when she hears it, she runs with it, and then all of a sudden, 2 weeks later, it's happened. I was like, that's not really what I meant or what I wanted to do. So what's the I mean, we talked about the trails, creating new trails. What's the future hold for Windrock?
My crystal ball, the batteries are broken. I don't know. It's hard. It really is hard to say. If you had told me 10 or 12 years ago that we would have 46 cabins, I'd have said you're crazy. Actually, if you had told our board of directors 30 years ago that people were going to be paying us to come to our property, they would have laughed you out of the boardroom.
Mhm.
And ultimately that is one of the great things about the company, is that they've been willing to adapt and change and to stay in business. If we were just a coal company, and which we don't have coal, we have it, it's just not being mined, we would probably have 4 or 5 employees total, because there would be forestry, there would be a couple of corporate people, and that'd be it. But where we're going, I don't know. We've done a whole lot of growth over the last few years. When I came here, I had no construction knowledge whatsoever. And since about year 2, there's been something being built almost the entire time. Sometimes multiple somethings being built.
Yeah.
last year we finalized first of this year we finalized a new premium RV area where we added 30 additional RV sites. We've rebuilt the general store, we've rebuilt the campground office. We now have tiny homes, we have yurts, we have all this different stuff.
Yeah, the general store.
know-
The general store was obviously it's great from obviously what you had. You talk about the board. How was that conversation saying, "Hey, look, we're gonna take this general store and make it, 5 times bigger"?
There was a change in leadership a little bit. The current chairman of the board and president of the company, his father was in his position before he passed away. And when we built the first general store, we kind of had to beg and plead and claw to get 3,000 square feet, because that was huge at the time. And what we have now is 10,000 square feet. And so the current president, he has a forward thinking, and the board as well. And thankfully have been willing to spend money to make the improvements. And that's one of the things that really sets us aside from a lot of other parks, is we have continued to put our profits back into our facilities. We have shareholders, we have to pay dividends, we have to show a profit, but we have just continued to pour money into the park. And that's apparent. Look around, and when you see 46 cabins, when you see a 10,000 square foot general store, when you see a 5,000 square foot campground office, and it's not just the office facility, it's climate controlled storage for things that they need in the campground. All that stuff costs a lot of money, but that's what it takes. That's what sets us aside from most other parks. It's not just the size of our park. It's when people come here, they are not our cabins are not, pre-built storage buildings that have been converted into cabins. These are stick-built cabins, 1 to 4 bedrooms that have leather and log furniture and other types of furniture that all have high-speed internet and TVs. And we're trying to make it a vacation destination, not just a place to come ride with a bed to stay in that has air conditioning and heat.
Yeah.
The general store, that 10,000 square feet, that compared to what we used to have, we are able to sell a lot more products. When instead of offering 3 or 4 t-shirt designs, we have, and Sam may be able to tell you exactly how many. 33. We have 33 different styles of t-shirts to sell, which is good for us. The t-shirt business is good for us, but not all customers like the same things. And so when you have more options for customers to buy, they're more likely to buy something. So we spent a whole lot of money on that building, and we are generating revenue from it now. I mean, it's not paying for itself yet, but we have invested in. That was a big investment into our business, was having a store that was big enough for people to be able to walk around, to be able to shop, to not feel like when they were looking at a shirt that they were blocking one of our 2 aisles, and we're in somebody's way. They could actually sit and look at something and make a decision, as opposed to saying excuse me while somebody's trying to walk past them to get to something else.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, the layout of the general store is great. I guess my thing is, when are you going to put online access to the store? Because I ran over my tumbler the other day, and now I got to go to Windrock to get a tumbler. I can't just reorder my tumbler. It's like the Masters.
Sounds like a great excuse for a trail ride to me.
It's like the Masters. You have to go to the Masters to get merchandise from the Masters. So
I'm curious. Did you run over your tumbler on purpose?
No, I actually.
Honey, I'm going to need to go get a new one.
Yeah, I'm going to need a bigger excuse than a tumbler. No, I left it on the fender of the Jeep, and I backed up and went down the driveway and crunch. I actually found it when I got home. I was like, some idiot ran over their tumbler. Oh, that's mine because it says Windrock on it. So, but
Which one was it?
Why? It was the silver one, the one with the plastic insert. Yeah, that thing.
Yeah. So
Crunch.
we had an online store for a little while. It just didn't do as great as we had hoped. So we went ahead and just took it down. We may bring it back. It's just one of those things that takes time to do. But people, you can still do it old school. You can call the store, purchase it over the phone, pay shipping, and send it to you.
All right. I can do that. I can make that happen. I can make that happen. So what's in 2025? What's the biggest event that we need to look out for at Windrock?
I don't know that answer yet. I can't tell you anything about that yet.
Uh-oh. No concerts.
Your crystal ball is working as well as mine.
Yeah.
No concerts on the radar? No. Obviously the shindig.
Not that we know yet. We're still working to finalize the...
Oh, cool. Okay. Hey, there you go.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, nonetheless, it's a great park. I've loved it.
I love it.
Yeah. It's we've enjoyed every trip we've ever taken out there. I will ask you this real quick. I mean, with 40 and the damages from the hurricane, you guys were back up and running pretty quick because of your team.
We didn't to speak of, we didn't have damages like North Carolina did.
Right.
I mean, we had some trees down and some things like that, but we didn't. In fact, I almost hate to say this, but the amount of rain we got was perfect. We had been dry, like almost no rain for more than 6 weeks. We were coming into the fall fire season, and I was pretty worried about forest fires. And when Helene came through, it rained for several days straight, but it was just a steady, soaking rain. Like for the most part, it wasn't until the end that our creeks started to come up at all, which showed me that it was just soaking into the ground.
Right.
And so it was actually, overall, it was very beneficial for us from a weather standpoint.
Yeah.
We did get some winds one day, and because of the volume of rain we had gotten over the few days, we did have some trees that came down, but no more than any other, bad thunderstorm that brings a few trees down. It was nothing like our neighbors to the east.
Yeah. Yeah,
Well,
we got pretty good.
Yeah, I was going to say Clinton's in Boone, so he was right in the thick of it.
For sure.
So, yeah, that's interesting. I mean, it's because we didn't even touch on this, but forest fires, I mean, I know that's a concern. I don't want to undermine that, but is it always a major concern? Is it?
No, not like what most people see as forest fires. I mean, the fires you see on TV out in the western forest fires, where the term is called crowning out, where the fire gets up into the crowns of the trees, the tops of the trees, and basically it always kills the trees. It travels fast, does lots of property damage. To speak of, we don't have those here. We had the fires in Gatlinburg in 2000 and whatever that was, 16 or 18.
Yeah.
18, I guess.
Yeah.
That was kind of the perfect storm. I mean, it happened, but I mean, that's the kind of thing that it doesn't happen here. I mean, I can say that. And it truly was just a perfect storm of dry conditions, high winds, and steep terrain. Most of our fires don't do any property damage. The only thing that it damages is the timber. Not all forest fires are bad. They actually can be beneficial to the forest, but if they do get hot, they can do damage to the butts of the trees. And so my forestry hat gets concerned about forest fires. And a year before last, we had a number of fires, but last fall was not a big deal. This year, we had one. Halloween was dry, and we had a couple of forest fires, but then November 1st, it rained. And so all the fires were out, and we've had rain like it rained today. And so basically, fire season's over.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just curious because you're right. You don't see Tennessee, Kentucky, North Georgia get that Western kind of the issues that they have out there. Of course,
It's all about humidity.
Yeah.
I mean, when West Coast stuff, you may have humidity in the single digits.
Oh yeah.
And we don't have that here. So our fuels on the ground never get that dry. In the fall, if it's sunny for several days in a row, and it'll dry the leaves out, and the leaves can certainly burn when leaves are falling off the trees. But leaves burning on the ground, they're not. It's not, generally speaking, not getting into the crowns of trees and doing significant damage.
Cool. Well, Brent and Sam, this has been an absolute pleasure to have you guys on. I say this a lot, but I feel like we could go on. I could talk about this all day long. And heck, there's so much we missed, the forestry stuff, getting more in depth into that, in the business and employee side of Windrock. We could get in so much more, but I think it's great to have you guys on. We love the park. We love going out there, spending time. I think the trail systems are great. You get into what you want to get into. I've had people ask me, especially during the Jeep invasion thing, when they go out there on Saturdays, are you going out there? Could you show me around? I'm like, you'll be fine. Like, they're not every trail is a tube rock trail that you see. You'll be just fine. Just follow the path.
Yeah.
And don't go down the blues or black, and you'll be just fine. But yeah, it's a park for everybody, and I think you guys do a great job of maintaining all the traffic that comes through there, and it's fantastic. We love it. So,
yeah.
Thank you so much.
Well, awesome. Well, it's great to have you guys. Thank you all for spending the last hour or so with us, listening to the podcast. And if you would like to reach out to us, you can reach out to us at Gmail at offroadcampfire@gmail.com. And if you haven't checked out Windrock, obviously go to their website and download the app, buy the map. It's all worth it when you go. Check out the lodges. Those are cool. Every time I leave Windrock, I always look at everybody staying at the lodges, and I go, that would be really nice to just stay there and not have to trailer back into town and go to the hotels. So we'll have to check those out next trip. So, but Brent, Sam, thank you very much for joining us. And as always, my name is Ryan.
I'm Clinton.
And this is the Off-Road Campfire. I'm going to learn to talk. I don't know where that came from. I turned into a 12-year-old boy again.
He's drinking straight whiskey in that cup. You guys don't know.
It is flat coffee. It has been coffee all night. It's been coffee in this. It has been true coffee. I'm down to the grinds, but we're going to try this again. Gee, Minnie, I'm just going to leave it there. Hey, my name's Ryan. That's Clinton. This is the Off-Road Campfire Podcast. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time around the campfire.